And we're always happy to have in this next guest. He is Steve Jones, getting ready to jump on his plane to head out to Indiana to do his first COVID Big Ten football game of the season. And he joins us here this morning on WSBA. Steve Jones. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Gary, good morning. Great to be with you.
Well, good morning. I imagine you're probably sitting in the airport right now getting ready for your plane, but we appreciate you taking a few minutes with us and wanted to get right to it. Penn State getting ready to go tomorrow. Hard to believe this is the opening game of the season, but nevertheless, you're going to be calling it tomorrow. What are we looking for from this team? We've heard a lot of things about them. Obviously, we got an injury right now that's going to make a big difference, but we also have an offensive line that's been the best in years. What's your take on this team?
I think they're really good, and I actually think it starts in an era where people are scoring like crazy. It starts with the defense. I think the defense is, Jack and I both feel it's going to be the kind of defense that can carry the day for you, and I think that's something we're anxious to watch tomorrow to see if it is what we think it is. Offensively, Sean Clifford is going to be just fine, and I think the offensive line you mentioned, I would say, is the best offensive line I've seen at Penn State since 2008.
Wow.
They've done a good job of building depth, experience, and I think it's a really good combination. But the defense, we think, would be the number one thing we'd look at right out of the gate.
And you talk about guys with defense. You got Shaka Toney back, who had a great season last season, looking for big things from him this year. And also the defensive backfield as well. You have like Lamont Wade at safety. So, I mean, you got some really good players there on the defense that are locking in a pretty good group.
Well, Tariq Castro-Fields coming back, locking down that one corner, I thought really, really helped. A guy that's really come on in training camp that has had a fabulous camp, and I can't wait to watch him play, is Jaquan Brisker. I thought he was outstanding during training camp. Joey Porter Jr., redshirt freshman, we're going to have to wait and see, but boy, based on camp, he looks like he is ready to be a big-time player for them. You mentioned Lamont Wade, who's coming off a spectacular season. And then when he found out he was going to end up being a captain, I mean, he couldn't believe it. And, the linebackers, you lose Micah Parsons, but it's a position of depth, just like we're losing Journey Brown. It's also a position of depth. So there are a couple spots in the football team where you could absorb big losses like that and not be dramatically affected, and that would be two of them right there.
We're talking with Steve Jones this morning, the voice of the Nittany Lions, right here on WSBA, the pregame show at 2 o'clock tomorrow, 3:30 the kickoff. On the offense, you mentioned Journey Brown is out. New offensive coordinator Kirk Soraka in there now. But you've got Noah Cain, Devin Ford in the backfield, and maybe a few people we haven't heard of yet. Tell us a little bit about that in terms of the offense and particularly the running backs.
Well, what Jaywan Sider does, he does a great job of teaching this. He teaches the running backs to be really good in the passing game. They run legitimate routes. They don't just circle out, float out, anything like that. They put linebackers and safeties in peril by the way they run routes. As running backs, Noah Cain, we know, you hit him at 7, he gets you 9. You hit him at 12, he gets you 14. Devin Ford can be a home run hitter. I thought Ford had a tremendous camp. And I think that his ability to break a big play is there. But you mentioned the unknowns. Keziah Holmes and Kevon Lee are two freshman running backs that I think are both going to play, especially Holmes. But I think Lee may get a chance to play as well. And they're two players that Holmes can be really explosive. I think Lee's got some pretty good wiggle to him, and they're deep at running back, and I think that they're not going to have any problem there.
Am I correct that Holmes wears number 26? There was a guy used to play at Penn State who wore number 26. It turned out not to be too bad.
Yeah. That's why before he took 0, I always used to kid Jonathan Sutherland about, he's amazing. You're so clever. I mean, every stadium I go to, they're wearing 26. I said, the love for you. And, he always got a kick out of that. So,
Hey, Steve, when we're talking about the offense, one of the things that's happened in the past months, Steve, big plays, and there have been times where, we haven't scored a whole lot. You got Kirk Soraka coming in from Minnesota. They had a really great attack last year, in fact, to beat Penn State. But, a guy who has the run-pass option, but also the power rushing. How different does the offense look this year so far with Kirk Soraka in charge now of that whole offensive system?
I just like the way the pace with which he calls plays. I think that's a big part of this. I think to the average fan, it's going to look very similar to what they've done. I think if you have the ability to take a video and really break it down, you'll see the subtleties that are the differences in it. But in terms of watching it on TV tomorrow, you'd sit back and say, gee, it pretty much looks like the way it always has been at Penn State because they've incorporated so much between the two systems.
When you look at this team, and I remember Coach Franklin saying a few years ago when they lost to Ohio State by 1, they said, hey, they're an elite team. We're a really good team. We have a few elite teams in this country right now, and you look at the Clemsons and the Alabamas, maybe even throw the Georgias in there, and the Ohio States year after year. Where does Penn State, in your opinion, right now rank? I mean, they've obviously had some great seasons. I mean, 3 11-win seasons the last, 5-6 years. But where do they rank in that kind of pantheon of really great teams in the country? Do we have a chance of being in that level this year?
Oh, they do have a chance because this is the way I look at the season. First of all, it's the best Indiana team I've seen in the 28 years that I've been in the Big Ten, okay? I mean, they've got a lot going for them. But Penn State, I think, has more talent. Penn State's better. I feel like this is an 8-game playoff to get to the playoff.
Yeah.
So each week, okay, you've got fans saying, oh, Ohio State's here next week. Forget that, okay? Talk about that Sunday. Okay, you got to win your first playoff game.
Right.
That's tomorrow. Okay, and then you have the next playoff game. So I think when you're in a limited schedule like this, you have to look at that. And they have the talent to get there. Now they have to clear all 8 of these hurdles plus the 9th one to get themselves in. This is going to be a year you can't afford to. Maybe you can afford to stumble, maybe, but I wouldn't want to take that risk.
Final question for you, and I bet you haven't been asked this yet. What's it going to be like for you tomorrow to go into a stadium where there are a few people sitting down there, and you and Jack are going to be sitting there, and you don't have that crowd? I read about when the golfers came back on the tour, they said, hey, we're hitting the ball 20 yards shorter because we don't have the adrenaline flowing. How's it work for announcers when the adrenaline of the fans is not flowing out there? Obviously, you're on the road, but still, fans do mean something to a game. Your thoughts about that?
Well, I've been asked about it 200 times.
Oh, so I wasn't the first? Son of a gun. Okay.
Everybody's asked.
Yeah.
When you do basketball and you announce holiday tournaments, there aren't people in the stands.
Right.
Cancun, there aren't people in the stands. I'll tell you one quick story. I know you got limited time here. Quick story. Dick Girardi and I are doing a basketball tournament at the Bradley Center in Milwaukee where the Bucks play. 19,000 seats.
Right.
It's noon on a Monday. They hand us the sheet. Attendance, 324.
Oh, my.
The next day, Penn State plays South Carolina State at noon. They hand us the sheet. He said 323. And Dick looks at me. He says, what happened to the other guy? So it's one of the, and that's,
yeah.
So I'm used to it. It's not, I'm not used to it in a football game, but you just our job is to do our job. Right? Big play happens, we're going to be passionate about the big play. I mean, it's just the way it is. You're not going to sit there. This isn't golf. We're not going to whisper our way through the thing. All right?
Well,
so I don't worry about that.
And we'll see who the best PA announcer is in the stadium running the crowd noise, right? That's always the big thing, too. So, anyway, Hey, Steve, safe trip out to Indiana. We're looking forward to hearing you tomorrow here on WSBA. We'll try to catch up with you next week about the big Ohio State game. But first, got to take care of the big Indiana game in that first of an 8-game playoff that you've described so well. Thanks, Steve. Take care, my friend.
Gary, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Take care, buddy.